When a mother went to the adoption hearing to see if she was allowed to legally adopt her foster child, the boy cried and stood up. What he told the court left them shocked and in tears. When a mother went to the adoption hearing to see if she was allowed to legally adopt her foster child, the boy cried and stood up. What he told the court left them shocked and in tears. Sarah and Stuart were a happily married couple living a happy life. They had married in their late teens, several years after meeting in school. Pair had grown close as friends and eventually made the transition to a relationship, which naturally led to marriage. But there was one thing that both of them were worried to talk about with the other. You see, neither of them wanted children at first. Telling the one that you love you don't want to have children is a tricky and often deal-breaking thing. But when they eventually revealed their shared secret, they both felt better. Still, as the years passed, they found themselves hankering for a child. No, they didn't want a biological one of their own. Before we continue, make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, and click the notification bell for more amazing stories. But they just wanted to experience what it would be like to have and care for a child. That's how Sarah and Stuart got into fostering children. Fostering allowed them to have the best of both worlds. They got to look after a child for several days at a time, but they were never completely tied down. It suited Sarah and Stuart down to the ground, and the schedule really worked for them. They would foster a child from Monday till Thursday or Friday, have a long weekend free, and then get another child for the following week, if they could manage it. Eventually, though, they ended up fostering a little black boy called Michael. He was only around 5 years old, but he had a cheeky smile and a fantastic sense of humor. He would make Stuart and Sarah laugh out loud, and they would love to spend time with him. In fact, they enjoyed spending time with Michael so much that they even offered to keep him over the weekend, something which was unheard of for the couple. Over those extra few days, they went to the cinema, went bowling, and even had a picnic. It was perfect, and all three of them thoroughly enjoyed themselves. When Monday rolled around, Sarah suggested that they keep Michael for another week. He really slotted into their lives well. Thankfully, Stuart agrees, and they looked after Michael for another full week. Eventually, those weeks became a month, and then a few months, and eventually a year. It was unbelievable. Michael had really changed their views on children, and they found themselves to be falling in love with the little boy. Both Sarah and Stuart couldn't have imagined their lives without Michael. A few days became a few weeks, and then a few months, and then eventually a year. They fell in love with him and eventually adopted him, legally making him a part of their family. But one day, something happened to turn their happy and content lives on its head. As they were sat watching TV one evening, there was a knock at the door. Stuart got up to answer it and found himself face to face with a black teenager around 13 years of age. The boy politely asked if Michael was there, at which point Michael came walking to see what the fuss was all about. As soon as Michael laid eyes on the boy at the door, he burst into tears and threw himself into his arms. The pair wept and hugged for a long time as Stuart and then Sarah watched on confused. It turned out that this teenage boy was Michael's brother, Deshawn. He too was an orphan and had been living on the streets for many years. Sarah had to act. She couldn't stand to see Michael's brother out on the streets, but at the same time, she never had any intentions of adopting an older child. You see, Deshawn was 13 years old, making him only 10 years younger than Sarah. That wasn't a very large age gap. However, Sarah's instincts told her that it was not an option to let Michael and Deshawn grow up separately. Stuart took a little longer to warm up to the idea, but eventually he too agreed that the brothers should remain united. But not long after Stuart and Sarah took in Deshawn, things started to go downhill. The whole family dynamic changed a little. Deshawn was a teenager, and as such, he would often go out and argue with Sarah and Stuart, as any boy that age might. This sometimes had a negative effect on Michael, who would also act out from time to time in order to impress and keep up with his brother. There was one other issue too. Their family thought that Deshawn was trying to get too close to Sarah, and they intimated that they may be feeling more than what a son should towards his mother. Still, Sarah and Stuart ignored all the detractors and did their best for Deshawn. The truth was that Deshawn had spent the majority of his young life without any parents or anyone to look after him. He had fended for himself and been through many hard times, and now that Sarah was willing to look after him, he emotionally clung to her. She was the one that truly showed him that love and affection that he had always craved. Deshawn may have acted up from time to time, but he tried to let Sarah and Stuart know how appreciative he was of them as often as he could. So, in order to make things official, Stuart suggested that they legally adopted Deshawn as they had with Michael. He was as much part of the family as his younger brother. Sarah agreed, and so began the long and tedious adoption process once again. Luckily, the couple had been through this process once before, so they knew what to expect. Still, it didn't make the wait any less nerve-wracking as they anticipated the judge's decision as to whether Deshawn could be adopted. But as the legal process dragged on, Deshawn started acting out more and more. But at the end of the day, Sarah and Stuart had to remind themselves that he was still only 13, nearly 14, and going through puberty. Acting out was normal for any teenager of that age. Still, it caused the family to become concerned. Sarah and Stuart even privately began to question whether they should adopt him or not. Still, it was too late. The process had started. Luckily, something would happen that showed them that they made the right choice. The entire family entered the courtroom when the judge had finally made his decision about whether Stuart and Sarah could adopt Deshawn. He had considered many factors, including Deshawn's behavior, Sarah and Stuart's willingness to look after the boy, plus them having already adopted his younger brother Michael. He weighed up the pros and cons and reached the decision, but before he could speak and let everyone know his decision, Deshawn spoke up and interrupted the proceedings, pointing to Michael and referring to Sarah and Stuart. Deshawn said, "We love them. Our whole family is the best thing we ever had. I'm glad to have these people in my life. I'm glad to be their son. They're the best thing I ever had. If I could wish for anything in the world, I would wish I could just love these people for the rest of my life. We cherish each other and cherish the days we get to spend together. They had no reason to take me in when I knocked on their door, but they did it anyway and loved me just as much as they loved my brother Michael. I will forever be grateful for their kindness and humanity. They saved me when the rest of the world had thrown me away." Deshawn wiped away the tears from his eyes as he spoke and looked across to see Sarah and Stuart also with tears welling up in their eyes. But his words had struck a chord, not only with Sarah and Stuart. The judge was also moved to tears. She looked the boy up and down and started to speak, not reading from her pre-prepared statement, but instead speaking from her heart. The judge admitted that his words had touched her heart, and she could see how deeply he meant them. It was her decision that Deshawn could legally be adopted by Sarah and Stuart. He was now legally part of the family. Yes, they might have looked like an odd family, and they certainly came together in an unconventional way, but they were as much of a family as any other. So now it's over to you. What did you think of this incredible story? Have you ever heard of a child speaking so kindly about his adoptive parents? How would you have ruled if you were in the judge's seat? As always, we love to hear from you, so be sure to leave your thoughts and opinions in the comment section down below. Binding bonds through beautiful tales. Thank you for watching.